All right, I show that it's 4:30, so let's go ahead and call to order the April 10th Planning Commission meeting. If you call the roll, please.
Portillo.
Here.
Sudbury.
Here.
Pleasant.
Here.
Dool.
Here.
Farner.
Here.
Ellis.
Here.
Lloyd.
Here.
All right, I show we have a quorum. Next up is our consideration of minutes from March 13th.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Got a motion from Klesson,
Second.
second from Portillo. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting minutes are approved. Next up, we have our public input session. This would be an opportunity for anybody in the public to address the Planning Commission for a non-published item or for a property line adjustment that we have. I think about everything else will be a public hearing. So if you want to address the Planning Commission concerning anything other than what's on our agenda, now would be your opportunity.
Oh, it's on the agenda.
Yeah, all the rezonings, we're going to do public hearings for each one later tonight. Do what now?
And the dockside improvement.
And the dockside improvement, we'll do that. We'll do a public hearing on that as well. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public input session and move on to unfinished business. We have large-scale 2023-47527, a large-scale proposal to redevelop and upgrade the existing concrete plant at 350 Pinion Drive. Staff report, please.
I have a small update from the work session to now. We have worked out the placement of the new wastewater management system that is going to go in place, and they will be getting an ADH permit. The placement is approved for planning, and that was the last planning comment they had to address for me. There are a few minor engineering comments that are outstanding. However, they're minor enough to where staff and engineering is comfortable with recommending approval tonight based off the engineer's comments, and then also just a reminder that they will need to get an ADH permit and floodplain permit before they start work. But other than that, staff is recommending approval of this redevelopment and improvement of an existing site.
Any questions for staff? The applicant present, would you like to add anything to the staff report? If you come up to the microphone and give us your name, please, and who you represent.
Mandy Bunch with Wallace Design Collective, representing the Eagle Ready Mix folks, and I don't really have anything to add. I think we've covered it. I think you guys have to be tired of seeing it.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, if not, I'll take a motion. We're not having public hearings on this item, sir, sorry. We'll do our best, but we're kind of... Yeah. I'll take a motion from commissioners.
I make a motion that this large-scale development be approved with staff recommendations.
We got a motion to approve from Farnham.
Second.
Yeah, second from Sudbury. If you call the roll, please.
Pleasant.
Yes.
Lloyd. Yes. Farner.
Yes.
Dool.
Yes.
Sudbury.
Yes.
Portillo.
Yes.
Ellis.
Yes. All right, you're approved. Next up, we have new business. First up is a property line adjustment 2021-41063, a request to extend the previously approved preliminary plat of the Gordon Hollow subdivision near Gordon Hollow Drive and Scottsdale Drive for an additional 1 year. Ms. Robertson.
Okay, this is a preliminary plat that you guys had previously approved. It's the Gordon Hollow subdivision. As noted on the agenda, the applicant is here tonight to request an extension. Our code requires that a preliminary plat work be finished within 1 year of being approved by the Planning Commission. That year has now lapsed, and they are returning to you guys for an extension, for an additional 1 year extension so they can complete that and return with the final plat. The letter is published for public viewing, and I believe the applicant is here tonight should you have any questions for them.
Is it already under construction?
They have a grading permit. They have a permit to start work. I believe they're still, which they are more than happy to answer on this, I'd defer to them, but they have a grading permit issued from the city.
Okay. Is the applicant present? You come on up, sir, and give us your name and Who you represent, please?
Good evening, afternoon, rather. I'm used to city council, so good afternoon. My name is Gene Grosspluss. I represent Cooper Communities. And you can tell by the letter that we've had some supply chain issues, particularly with water meters and with transformers. We've got all those back orders. We've had problems with labor shortages. I mean, traditionally, we haven't encountered this before, but now, as far as workers, some of our contractors are having difficulties retaining some workers. So that's why, those are a few reasons why we weren't able to complete in the first year, and that's why we're asking for an extension of that time to obtain these things, overcome the supply chain issues, and hopefully deal successfully with the labor shortage issues.
Are you currently under construction or about to be? Or?
Yes, yeah, we're about to be. As Taylor indicated, we pulled the grading plan a couple of weeks ago, so we're ready to go on that.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant or staff? If not, we'll take a motion to extend their approval for 12 months.
Motion to extend the approval for 12 months.
Got a motion from Sedbury, second from Lloyd. If you call the roll, please.
Portillo,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Lloyd. Yes. Jewel,
Yes.
Sedbury,
Yes.
Wesson,
Yes.
Ellis.
Yes.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you. All right, next up, we have rezone 2023-48097, a request to rezone the subject property located east of the intersection of Commonwealth and Houston Road, known as the Metfield Cart Barn, from P1 Conservation to P1 Neighborhood Commercial. Ms. Workman.
Thank you. So this is the Metfield Cart Barn. The applicant here is the Bella Vista POA. They're requesting to rezone a 2.88 acre portion of this property from P1 Conservation to C1 Neighborhood Commercial. This is going to be a portion of the entire tract, so it's going to be via a meets and bounds rezoning through a legal description. This subject property is situated in eastern Bella Vista, east of the intersection of Commonwealth Road and Houston Road. The adopted zoning map identifies this developed parcel as P1 Conservation. The P1 district is designed to protect lands affected by floodplains, streams, wetlands, steep topography, woodlands, and wildlife habitats. Further, to restrict development in areas not suitable for or capable of sustaining development. The subject site is not impacted by the standard considerations of the P1 district. Aerial imagery confirms that the existing improvements were constructed prior to 1996. The applicant's requested district, C1, is designed to be located adjacent to residential areas. Performance criteria and area regulations to ensure compatibility require that lots be a minimum of 1 acre in size, 100 feet wide, and 100 feet deep. The subject area meets all bulk and area regulations measuring 2.88 acres in size, with widths and depths exceeding 100 feet. The adopted comprehensive plan promotes the development of a neighborhood center with small commercial activity to serve adjacent residential uses. Neighborhood center nodes include a mix of retail, services, and institutional uses. Commonwealth, a minor arterial, provides primary access between the developed area and US Highway 71. The site contains approximately 1.7 acres of off-street paved parking to support the existing golf course use and trailhead use. Adjacent land use includes single-family residential, communications, personal services, and commercial recreation. The C1 district schedule of uses have the ability to support the development of a neighborhood center. Thus, city staff are recommending approval of this request. Legal notifications were met by city staff and the applicant. No public or utility comments were received at the time of this report. On page 36, you will find the table of permitted uses, which is a comparison between the P1 and C1 districts, showing the allowable and conditional uses within both of these zones. Following is the standard review criteria when you're considering a rezone application. And then the additional exhibit behind that would be an excerpt from our comp plan that highlights the neighborhood center and that subject area in that circle indicated with 1. There have been no changes to the applicant's exhibit or letter of intent. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for staff?
Yes.
No, hang on, we're not holding a public hearing yet. This is the commissioners talking with the staff.
Okay.
All right, is the applicant present? Would you like to add anything to the staff report at this time? If you come up and give us your name, please, and who you represent.
My name is Tom Judson. I represent the Bella Vista POA. Regarding this application and the other applications that you see in front of you today, we do not plan on making any changes to the site. We're just trying to get our zoning in line with the historic and current use.
All right, any questions for the applicant? All right, if you go ahead and sit down at this time, we will go ahead and conduct our public hearing. This will be an opportunity for somebody in the public to come up and address the Planning Commission with your comments. We do ask that you give us your name and your address, and you'll be limited to 5 minutes to address the commission. So at this time, if you'd like to come up, please approach the podium. Need to approach the podium. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Ann Olson. I live at 6 Carter Circle. My property backs immediately onto this property. I could not hear very well, and I'm sorry that I'm old and I cannot hear as quickly as these lovely people speak. But I heard the word small neighborhood center, so I'm assuming that they're planning at some point to put the Dollar General in there that they couldn't get at Houston and Commonwealth. So I have a problem. I also received a second letter today that they're rezoning more of the property that's affecting my property. We have a small sewer capability. I had to buy a pump to keep the sewer going at my house. So if they're putting in commercial property, I can guarantee that the sewer system will probably be overloaded. The water availability, the water pressure is not always great at my house. And if they have a commercial establishment there, it's going to increase the demand for water. The traffic is very congested in those areas. People already speed through there. It is a residential area. It's supposed to be a residential area. That's why we bought it. So if they want to attract businesses to Bella Vista, I suggest they use the property that's open and available at Sugar Creek Shopping Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like? Yes, sir. If you would go ahead and come up and give us your name and address, please.
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear back there hardly anything that was going on. I don't know how your system is. But our concern is, we live in
If you could give us your name and address, please, and address the Planning Commission, not the audience.
Hello?
Yes. Give us your name and address, sir.
Okay, we live at number 1 Carter Circle. I'm going to try to talk loud. And we're concerned about this being commercial, of some type of business being in that area. Can you promise us that will not happen if you rezone it? That's all we're asking. Is there an answer?
I'll try to answer some questions after we're done with the public comment period, sir.
Well, I mean, you're asking to rezone this, but all we're worried about is a commercial business going there once you rezone it. And that's all we're asking. You can't answer that question?
Not yet, I cannot.
Well, why are we here then?
Well, first of all, the city is not requesting to rezone this. The POA is requesting to rezone this.
I know this.
Good.
But we fought it on another side of the street up there, and it stopped it. They were going to put I believe, I forgot what kind of store it was. Can somebody help me? A Dollar General, and we don't want something up there like that. That's all we're asking. And if nobody can answer me, it's kind of ridiculous.
Understand.
Sorry, I apologize.
Larry Wilms, 109 Mayfair Drive. I'm speaking in support of the rezoning. My understanding, based on the applicant's statements, they're proposing to rezone it to make it consistent with the current use, which is historic on that site. I would support that.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission concerning this rezone request? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take it back to the commission. Real quick, before staff gets up here, I will add a few things just so you'll understand how this process works. When we're looking at rezoning of this type of a nature is different than when you were referring to the Dollar General. They were coming through with a very specific rezone request to allow for Dollar General called a PUD. That is not what's happening in this particular application. All that the POA is asking for is for a C1 zone. And when the Planning Commission looks at this, we don't actually rezone it. We make a recommendation to City Council. And the things that we look at to evaluate is our growth comprehensive map, which staff has recommended, adjacent zonings and compatibilities to that. And I can't remember what the third thing is. Is it the master street plan?
What we compare it to?
Yeah.
Yeah, we compare it to surrounding existing uses, our future land use plan, and then of course the access and mobility.
Yeah, so basically our master street plan, compatibility with surrounding uses, and what our comprehensive growth plan calls for, which our city council adopted several years ago. And those are kind of the guiding principles that we have as a commission. And our comp plan that was adopted by our council several years ago called this out to be a neighborhood center, which is not a large big box commercial retailer. It's more of a neighborhood businesses to support the neighbors around it. As far as drainage and utilities and everything else, that would be developed, or that would be addressed at a future date if there's ever going to be redevelopment on this property. But I think the POA's got some stipulations that they have to meet as far as the citizens of Bella Vista go as well, before they can actually lease it or sell it or whatever that they do. But once again, all we're looking at as a commission is compatibility with the future land use plan, and then we make a recommendation to the city council. The city council is who actually rezones these properties. So, Ms. Workman, if you want to come back up to the podium. Commissioners, back up to you.
Well, Mr. Judson could answer a question for us, for the people in the audience. It's my understanding that the POA cannot sell that property without a vote of the entire membership. And,
go ahead, Mr.
and
Judson.
that is, if that is correct, which I understand that it is, it's almost guaranteed that it can't be sold. I do understand, though, that you could lease it somewhere down the road to somebody if you chose to without a vote of the membership. Is that correct?
So, let me address the whole thing, and if I miss that, you catch me. Okay. So first of all, for the people behind me, I'm going to stay the entire meeting, but if anybody wants to speak with me after the meeting, I will be here. I will answer all the questions honestly and directly. We have no intention of putting a Dollar General store in there. Our intent is to keep it in the current and historical use. The POA, the only way the POA can sell land, and we have zero intention of selling this land or any other land, but if the POA did intend, it would require a vote of the entire membership. On top of that, all this land has a deed restriction against it, which prevents it to be used only for recreational purposes only, such as a golf course, such as a restaurant, a fitness facility, those types of things. With regards to leasing, the longest a lease could be entered into would be a maximum of 25 years. I doubt any logical business would put multi-million-dollar improvements into a piece of property and only have that piece of property for 25 years. And even if we did that, it would still have to comply with the deed restriction, which is recreational purposes only. So that is not the intent at all, and if anybody wants to speak with me at all after this meeting, I gotta stay here for the whole time because you have multiple other requests in front of me. I will be happy to answer any questions at all.
Thank you, Mr. Judson. I wanted that information to be made for the people in the audience. And thank you.
All right. Ms. Workman, I guess, and Commissioners, it's back up to you all for further discussion. If not, we'll entertain a motion to recommend this on the City Council.
I make a motion that we forward this to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Okay, we got a motion from Farner. Second. Second from Sedbury. If you call the roll, please.
Jello,
Yes.
Farner,
Yes.
Floyd,
Yes.
Sewell,
Yes.
Sedbury,
Yes.
Plesson,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes. All right, and that will move on to the City Council meeting on, is it April 24th? Okay, so I'll be taken up by the council on April 24th. Next up, we have rezoning request 2023-48211, a request to rezone the subject property at 700 Blowing Springs Road, known as the Blowing Springs RV Park, from P1 Conservation to C1 Neighborhood Commercial. Ms. Workman, please.
Thank you. This will be on page 41 of your agenda packet. The applicant here is the Bella Vista POA. They are requesting to rezone an 18.808 acre portion of this property from P1 Conservation to C1 Neighborhood Commercial. This is just like the last one. It is going to be a portion of that entire parcel, which will be done via meets and bounds with a legal description. 700 Blowing Springs Road is situated in southern Bella Vista, northeast of the intersection of Mercy Way and Dartmoor Road, accessed by Blowing Springs Road, a local dead-end street. The adopted zoning map identifies the developed parcel as P1 Conservation. The P1 Conservation, as we've discussed, is designed to protect lands affected by floodplains, wetlands, topography, woodlands, wildlife, etc. Further, to restrict development in areas not suitable for or capable of sustaining development. The subject site is not affected by the standard considerations of the Conservation District. Currently, the subject site contains hard surface off-street parking, an office building, 64 RV camping spots, 3 rental cabins with accessory laundry and shower facilities. The adopted comprehensive plan promotes a large-scale commercial activity center with a mix of commercial, institutional, and residential uses to promote a regional draw in this area. The subject site is 0.5 miles east of US Highway 71, 1.7 miles north of Interstate 49, and surrounded by the Blowing Springs multi-use trails. The Blowing Springs Greenway connects Blowing Springs Park to the Metfield Park. Staff finds the by right uses of the C1 district to be compatible with adjacent residential, recreational, and institutional uses. The applicant's request is in keeping with the intent of the future land use plan and supports the development of a large-scale commercial activity node as recommended by the comp plan. Notifications have been met. There have been no additional public comments or utility comments since the posting of the work session packet. Staff is recommending approval of this request because it meets the intent of the comp plan. On page 42, you will find the comparison between P1 and C1 schedule of uses. And on page 44 is an excerpt from that comp plan showing the community destination area, which highlights the types of uses that the comp plan is wishing to see in this area. And if you'll scroll down a few more pages, page 47 is an aerial image of the subject area shown, which includes the shower area, all of the RV camping spots, the short-term rental cabins, and the office building that's located at the entrance of this site. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, the applicant, would you like to come up and add anything to the staff report? Do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? If not, this is a rezoning request, so we will go ahead and conduct a public hearing. If there's anybody in the public that would like to address this, please come up to the podium and give us your name and address, and you'll be provided 5 minutes to address the commission.
I can ramble, so I've got to read.
That's fine if you would start with your name and address first.
My name's Dwayne Hill. I'm at 32 Attleboro Lane, overlooking the RV park. And I've lived there 4.5 years. I am strongly opposed to the POA's application for rezoning of this parcel in question. The parcel may have been historically used for commercial purposes, but was likely doing so specifically for the RV park, camping, and as of last year, for tiny cabins under a conditional use permit. The current Bella Vista table of permitted uses provided to me by planner Workman does not permit the operation of a campground in either P1 or C1 zoned parcels. If this rezoning is approved, will the existing RV park be shut down in favor of other commercial projects that are allowed? Within the zone, no application for any other commercial use has been received per planner Workman. However, rezoning to C1 opens the door for commercial enterprises in existing open space within the parcel or by replacing space allotted to existing conditional use permits if they exist, such as replacing the RV park to open a convenience store or liquor store or other commercial enterprise. Since specific commercial projects can be granted a conditional use permit, and I know that exercise last year, this rezoning accomplishes nothing but further reducing our city's dwindling preservation space, potentially increasing already congested traffic, and increasing the already high noise level for those homeowners like me that rim the parcel, to say nothing of the aromas that sometimes well up through the trees from the septic system down there. Finally, I ask that you act in the best interest of tax-paying Bella Vista residents by leaving the zoning as is and providing any variance needed for protecting our precious preservation areas. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Yes, sir. If you would give us your name and address, please.
Larry Wilms, 109 Mayfair Drive. I guess I have a question along with a comment, two comments perhaps. The aerial graphic that's in here appears to be upside down. Is that correct? No, south arrow is down rather than north arrow is down rather than up. Is that correct?
You're talking about the aerial image on page 47?
I think that's the page number. I don't have something.
Yeah, it could be.
It's the last page of the package.
No, I think it's, I think you're right. It's upside down.
Okay, it confused me. Anyway, relative to the RV portion of it, does the C1 neighborhood commercial district allow for that provision of commercial enterprise? But in lieu of that, generally I would speak in support of the rezoning.
Thanks, sir. Is there anybody else who would like to address the commission concerning this request? Yes, if you'd come give us your name and address.
Joe Miller, 25 Attleboro Lane. I also am right up above the current park. There's no reason to be switching that over commercial. None of the people who have moved there the last 5, 6, 7 years would ever have moved there if they thought something commercial was going to be in their backyard. So I would suggest you keep it P1, and if you do need to go, you use the variance process. One thing at a time. If it makes sense to us, doesn't hurt our property values or our quality of life, that makes sense. But do not do that now. And it doesn't make sense. You've already put commercial property on a P1 anyway, which is beyond me why that even happened. Mr. Hume had a great thought. My God, if you went to commercial and the park, as you state, might have to be removed. The mini homes were fine. You know, it wasn't that big of a deal. The aesthetics of the why people are there are fine. It's a campsite. It's a quiet campsite. You put anything commercial in there, it's going to take away the need or the want to ever park there. So keep it P1, no C1. Use the variance process if we need to. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Can you come up and give us your name and address, please?
My name is Jeanette Hugh. I am at 32 Attleboro Lane here in Bella Vista. I use the trails. I use Blowing Springs quite often. Absolutely love it. Love the park. It is growing. We are growing, and which I'm all for, but we need to grow wisely. We need to go back and revisit our expansion plan that was laid out several years ago. That's one of the things that drew us to Bella Vista and why we bought above Blowing Springs. We like the park, we like the nature. We can hear the bands and everything. It's not been offensive in the winter. It's worse because there is no foliage in the trees to stop the sounds. We do get the sewer smells. We called and complained, never received a call back from that. And expanding commercial use is not good for that area. We have a whole new area by Lake Bella Vista, well, the creek now, that's going to be going through. That would be great for restaurants, clubs. People can come and camp, use the RV park at Blowing Springs, ride their bicycles down. With the expansions of the trail, they have direct access. Now, since they're doing the new pass underneath the Mercy Way Bridge, to use that. So I am asking you, please reconsider zoning that as C1. This is my home. I love it here. You know, this is important to me. It's personal. It's not in your backyard, but it is in mine. And I hope you give me the same consideration you'd like me to give you. And I thank you very much. Please keep this P1.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Dan Flippo. I live at 24 Attleboro Lane, and I would like to keep it P1 also. I second everything that they've said. There's a couple other things. That intersection right there with the school, with the hospital, with the veterinary clinic, gets terribly, terribly crowded. I know they're expanding the bridge, but they're not expanding the roads. I think we're getting the cart way, way before the horse. You know, we need the infrastructure in there before we talk about doing, you know, some of the planning that you're talking about doing. I'm in the construction business. I'm all for construction. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it needs to be staged construction, and we need to do the little things, the roads, the lights, the sidewalks. We need to do some of those things before we do this. Zoning the whole thing to C1, I'm a little bit concerned about all the C1. You know, why? I've lived at this address for 17 years. It's been wonderful, except for the sewer smell. But, you know, I don't understand why it's all coming in one big lump sum. That doesn't make sense to me. You know, if there's no use for it, if nobody's planning anything, why change it all under one package? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Ms. Workman? Do we have any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I have a question, but it may be for the applicant rather than you, so let me know. Do you know, from the time that it was zoned P1, what was the state of this? Do we have the RV park? Did we have the trails and everything like that? That was in existence?
The RV park has existed as that large paved space since the early 1990s. And we verified that with Google imagery.
Okay, and then the P1 zone was attached to it. Do we know about what date that was?
It's currently P1 under the 2018 zoning map.
Yeah, we, right, wrong, or indifferent, when we formed the city in 2007, we looked at everything that was owned by the POA and, quite frankly, everything that was owned by Cooper, and didn't even look at where it was at or how it applied to the city, and just said P1. And
Regardless of what the use was.
regardless of what the use was, and we didn't realize at the time when we put that P1 designation on it that it quite frankly was an error, because P1 doesn't allow for anything other than,
Parks and recreation.
well, other than golf courses. And then it doesn't even include, it doesn't even allow for the restaurants and the clubhouses. I was looking at the schedule of uses. It does not allow for a campground in anything but an A1 and a something else. And this was a non-conforming use, and it would continue to be a non-conforming use. I think there's a misconception of what the terminology for planning is. All that we do, we're not talking about some development plan. We're not talking about anybody proposing to do anything. We're just looking at the comp plan, the forward-looking plan the city council adopted a few years ago, and said, is this comply, is this consistent with that comp plan that the council did, I don't know how many years ago it was, and this is one of the areas that they identified long-term will become commercial. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may be 5 years from now, but the council held public hearings, they paid a lot of money to have studies done. This area was identified to be a C1 neighborhood center at some point in the future. That does not mean that it's going to be big commercial establishments, but I mean, that's kind of what our comp plan shows. So, Taylor, I can tell one of you all, somebody is wanting to add more to this. Go ahead.
I've got a comment.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. Farney.
Okay. When I read what is allowed in P1, it tells me parks and it tells me recreation. That seems to me to be what's going on down there right now.
Except we have a specific line that says campground.
There is a specific line item for campground.
Well, I think it may be semantics that that property is being used for parks and recreation. I mean,
we have a very specific line item for campground, and if we have a specific line item for a specific use, that's what we have to apply. There's no semantics involved.
Additionally, when we look at the uses versus the zoning district, that's the underlying zoning district, we look at things like your performance criteria. So that would be how big that site is, how much of it is paved, how much of that green space requirement is being met. And right now, that site does not meet the green space requirement. It's got heavy pavement on it, and it's been developed in a way that it does not meet the intent of the P1.
Also doesn't meet the intent of C1.
It also doesn't meet the intent of the C1 by way of the campground.
Right.
But our comprehensive plan, and that's what we got.
I understand that.
When we're looking at rezoning, we're not looking at current use. We're looking at what is consistent with the comp plan that's been identified by, or been adopted by our city council.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
With that existing use, for people that want to take a look at the code section there where we're discussing nonconformities, that's a nonconformity section under the zoning code. That's section 109.126. So it allows for established uses in any of the zoning districts as long as they continue that use and that use has not been discontinued for 6 months or more, and they're not expanding that use or making it more intense. It's allowed to remain a legal nonconformity, and they're allowed to maintain it or repair it as needed, but no other changes can happen to that land as considered a non-conforming established legal use.
They can't come in and add more campsites to it. If they shut it down for 6 months, then it's shut down forever.
okay, back to what I was saying before. That's recreational use, I don't care what you say, but also C1 does not allow for campgrounds. So it's going to be non-conforming no matter what.
That's right.
Okay, so I don't see any point in changing it. That's where I'm going with that.
Well, like I said, it comes back to we have to look at, we're not looking at the use that it currently is today. We're looking at the comp plan that the council adopted, which has identified this as a neighborhood commercial zone at some point in the future.
Community designation.
Or community designation, yeah.
This is the most intense node it's near the most intense node that our future land use plan has identified. And they're requesting a C1, which is much under that future land use. And I also wanted to provide the definition of our code for recreation services, which is the recreation that keeps getting referred to. Just wanted to provide it. Recreation services in our code means organized sports, community centers, practice fields, or other open spaces dedicated to uses like that. Typically, the campground is separated from that.
And then our use of it is because it's our public use.
But according to this, you can't have campground anywhere,
I know,
unless it's conditional use.
in an A1. Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion to recommend this on the city council.
I make a motion, we recommend the city council.
We got a recommendation from Sedbury.
What's?
Oh, for approval.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember, we always make our motions in the
I know, but
affirmative. Yes,
I didn't
sir.
hear him, I want to be
Yeah,
sure.
my mistake.
What's the recommendation, I'm sorry?
As a commission, we always make an affirmative recommendation, and it's a recommendation to forward this to city council for approval. The city council is the ones that actually rezone it. All we do is hold a public hearing, make comments, and say, hey, this is consistent with your map or not, council. It's up to you all.
I have a question, sir.
The public hearing's closed. I can't take comment questions from the public at this point. Thank you. So we got a motion on the table from Sedbury to move on to city council with a recommendation to approve.
Second.
We got a second from Lloyd. If you call the roll, please.
Warner,
No.
Sudbury,
No, ma'am.
I'm sorry,
No, ma'am.
Hudson,
No.
Duels,
No.
Portillo,
Abstain.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes, this will move on to the city, or no, it does not move on to city
No.
council. It can be appealed to city council,
They
correct?
have 30 days to file an appeal, so there's a chance it may still move forward depending on the applicant's actions.
Okay.
Will there be another public hearing if that is appealed?
No, there will not be another public hearing. It just goes straight to city council, and the city council will either take it up or not take it up. Yeah, this is the only public, this is the only public hearing that will be held on this rezone request. All right, next up, we have a rezone 202348171, a request to rezone the subject property at 3 Reardon Drive, known as Reardon Hall, from R1 Single Family to C2. Ms. Robertson.
I don't have much more to add from the work session, but just a quick overview. This is a request to rezone Reardon Hall at 3 Reardon Drive from R1 single family home to C2 light commercial. It does have access to a minor thoroughfare or a major thoroughfare, but it's actually a minor arterial, however you want to label those. It does meet the requirements for the C2 district. The comp plan has this area marked as a future public park. So city-owned, dedicated to the public park. Staff found that doesn't really, staff find that based off the information that we talked about recently, the difficulty of selling and changing hands and all of the discussion we've had with POA property, that's not really a applicable future use to compare to, just based off what the definition of a public park is. This is private property, and we've learned that it's difficult for it to change hands, requiring everyone's approval. So staff found that that is not an applicable consideration. However, we will know that this has a historical use on this site, those being recreational club, controlled commercial, recreational, retail, tavern, and personal improvement services, all commercial and civic uses. It is surrounded by a buffer strip to the north that separates it from the residential area, and then as well there is an office use to the north, but on the zoning map it's shown as a single family home, however it is not. That is the Greens office, control office, however you want to label it, and then of course the Greens are to the northeast, and then that parking lot you recently rezoned to C1, and of course another buffer strip / right of way to the south. Staff is recommending approval of rezoning this to a more intense use than an R1 single family home. Based off the future land use plan, this may be more in line with a C1, just based off the comp plan that we have in front of us. However, single family home probably not applicable in this area. So staff is recommending C1 or C2. Should the planning commission modify tonight C1, staff would recommend approval of that as well. All legal notifications have been met, and other than that, I don't have much to add.
Any questions for staff? Does the applicant have anything you'd like to add to the staff report?
We selected C2 based upon my reading of the ordinances. If that's not accurate and C1 is a more accurate one, we're totally fine with that.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant? All right, we'll go ahead and conduct the public hearing on this rezone request. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the commission, if you would come up and give us your name and address, please, and you'll be given 5 minutes to speak.
Larry Wilms, 109 Mayfair Drive, Bella Vista. I would speak in support of the applicant's request and the staff recommendation on this particular rezoning.
Thanks, sir. Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, back to you.
Make a motion that we recommend rezone to C1.
So you want to send this on to City Council with the recommendation to rezone this to C1?
Yes.
We had a motion from Dool. Second from Sedbury. If you call roll, please.
Sedbury?
Yes.
Dool?
Yes.
Portillo?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Warner?
Yes.
Wesson?
Yes.
Ellis?
Yes. All right, that will be taken up at the April 24th City Council meeting. Next up, we have a rezone 2023-48174, a request to rezone subject property west of Reardon Hall from R1 single family to residential to C2 light commercial. Ms. Robertson.
Similar to the first one, they are requesting C2. Staff is probably recommending a lower zone here as well. But C1 will probably be more applicable or appropriate in this property. It's not identified as a commercial node in the future, however, based off land, and the C1 is intended to just serve nearby residences. It's intended to be in the residential zone and provide those services close to those houses and whatnot. Staff is thinking that probably C1 would be a more appropriate zone for this as well. This is the chunk of land that has the giant park structure on it. It's funky shaped, and it's to the west of it. It separates the Reardon Hall from the right-of-way to the west and the south. Staff has nothing further other than that to add. This parcel does meet the C1 requirements other than the unique shape. It is the correct size and street frontage, and it would also provide an additional buffer, as noted before, of a lower intense use than C2.
Any questions for staff? Is there anything that the applicant would like to add to the staff report?
We'd be fine with C1.
All right, any questions for the applicant? No. All right, any commissioners, back to you. Any questions, comments? Sounds to me like we need a motion to recommend this on the City Council with a... No, we did not. I'm sorry. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address the commission concerning this zoning request? So if you give us your name and address. Thank you, Commissioner Lloyd.
Larry Wilms, 109 Mayfair Drive, Bella Vista. I would speak in support of the applicant's petition on rezoning this parcel and the staff recommendation for it.
Thanks, sir. Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission concerning this rezoning request? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and commissioners, is back to you.
I make a motion we forward this to the City Council with a recommendation for C1.
We got a motion from Farner.
Second.
I just heard a unison a second. We'll go Klesson, second from Klesson. Would you call a roll, please?
Wesson?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Portillo?
Yes.
Dool?
Yes.
Warner?
Yes.
Sedbury?
Yes.
Ellis?
Yes. All right, this will be taken up at the April 24th City Council meeting. Next up, we have a zoning variance request 2023-48244, a variance request on a septic system setback for a proposed septic system at 27 Glenborn Drive. Ms. Robertson.
Okay, the applicant is seeking a variance tonight on 107-186-1A, which is basically a zoning code that requires all septic systems from the tank and beyond to stay 10 feet from all property lines. However, we do have a caveat in code. It is 109-68H3, which provides an opportunity for houses that need to put a septic system on the adjacent lot to do so and cross that property line so long as it's the side yard. It does not allow it for rear or front yards. And that provides a mechanism on the side yard that's called a notice of structural encroachment. But since this is the rear yard of the house, because our code bases side, front, and rear based off the pedestrian entry for corner lots, that is not applicable here and a zoning variance is needed. Staff will note, no hardship was found from staff's point of view in the letters to why they can't turn the house to face that Arndell, I believe is what it is. Arundel? Probably saying it incorrectly. Arundel Lane. So staff has no recommendation at this time based on the lack of hardship that staff could find. However, the applicant might be here tonight to move further. He's here tonight. So if you guys have further questions for him, I know we mentioned that he may have questions from the work session. He's here. Other than that, I don't have much else to provide you guys.
I do have a question for staff, and it might be good that the POA is here. I understand the from conversations that we've decided you can do a lot combination on a situation like this and create a single lot. I remember us talking about this before. And if this was combined into a single lot, and the POA, I think Mr. Justin has said before, if somebody combines it, 2 tracts of land into one, it doesn't change the dues that they have to pay. So the POA didn't have any issue with it. So I guess the question I have for you is would the need for a variance go away if this was combined into one tract of land?
Yes, it would. However, this caveat exists because of the difficulty of combining lots. It's not the POA that approves lot combinations. The replat restriction comes from the covenants, which is overseen by the ACC and CCI, which we all know. So for them to do a lot combination, they would have to go through a replat with CCI before they'd come through you guys with a lot combination.
Don't they still need to get approval from CCI to encroach into those private easements?
Yep, they would need an easement release.
So same difference.
It's not a lot combination. Easement release is not a lot combination. That property line's still there, and that means our setbacks are still there, which means we can't do anything with that. Just because the easements are released doesn't mean that the property line goes away. We still enforce the setbacks. It's just we still want to see the easement release because we don't like things going in easements, even though we're not the owner. It's not a public easement. We still like to help enforce that and make sure things aren't popping up in easements where they shouldn't be. But we still enforce the setbacks if there's a property line involved. And with the easement release, there still is a property line.
It still brings up the question that had been raised before. What's in place to prevent the one lot from being sold off from the other lot in the future?
That's the notice of structural encroachment letter. But with this, it doesn't apply. That's why they're here before you guys, because the notice of structural encroachment is only offered for side yards. However, if you guys did decide to approve this, you guys could probably put a stipulation that some kind of deed restriction or recording went along with it, since the NSCL is not applicable here. However, the easement release would go in place and cover it from the private side, but from the city side, we would not have a mechanism other than your variance that would keep these two together. But I believe that's the intent of the easement release. However, I'm not sure if the easement would be solely released or not. That would be a question for the developer.
I brought this up at the work session. I'm not sure whether it makes any difference or not, but the way I read this, only the line from the septic tank to the leach field is what's going to go through the easement. Is that correct?
Setback. We're looking at the setback, but the tank.
The tank's on one lot,
Yep.
and the field would be on the other lot.
Yep.
So the only thing happening is the one pipe going, one or more pipe going through to the leach field.
Yes, it's crossing that setback.
Okay.
Okay.
And Commissioner Lloyd brought up a good question last time too, if there was any interest in maybe including for these corner lots, amending code to where a rear could be considered
Right, since it's allowed if the lots are side by side, the only thing that makes these two allegedly not side by side is which way the front door faces. So that seems to be a semantic issue, so perhaps we need to make an adjustment that front to back and side to side are the same.
Or an exemption for corner lots for rears, because the intent,
Something, yes,
I believe the intent of the original one was to keep it from going on the common property.
Yeah.
yes.
It doesn't change the fact that I would prefer to see it all combined into one tract, but I've not tried that yet myself, so I don't know how difficult it is or it isn't.
It's time consuming and costly. I think our variance might be more equitable for the homeowner since unless they can face the house on a rundle instead of the other one.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Would you like to add anything to the staff report? You come on up and give us your name and your address, sir.
I don't live in Phillips.
That's okay.
Chance McMaster, 17943, and the Ridge Rockers.
Can you speak more?
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So our reasoning for doing the house the way we want to do it is, one, it's called for on the cul-de-sac plan for the house to be facing towards Glendenborn, not Arundel to the side. Also, there is a unimproved street on Arundel that goes into the cul-de-sac that's overgrown with weeds and grass and everything, where if we were to turn the house, we would be facing that street. It's not very conducive for traffic, and also it would eliminate whatever backyard the house may have to very little, so it just really wouldn't be great for the house itself. So that's all of that.
All right, are there any other questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, if you go ahead and take a seat, we'll conduct the public hearing on this. If there's anybody in the public that would like to address the commission concerning this variance request, if you come up and give us your name and address, please. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and commissioners, back to you. We do need a motion in the affirmative, please.
I'll make a motion we approve.
Got a motion from Sedberry?
Second.
Got a second from Lloyd. If you call the roll, please.
Patillo,
No.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Jewel,
Yes.
Sedbury,
Yes.
Farner,
Yes.
Wesson,
Yes.
Ellis,
Yes. We would ask for staff to take a look at this particular ordinance and see if it's something that needs to be amended to deal with corner lots. Because as you know, the commission does not like approving variances.
I think maybe, well,
We'll talk about it later. Further, I would ask staff to reach out to CCI to see if there's a way to start looking at combining these lots, because we know septic systems are going to be an issue moving forward.
We have, which we can talk about that in open discussion. It's been an ongoing discussion.
Okay. Yeah, we probably need to add that to the agenda or do something with that and see what we can do. Next up, we have zoning variance request 2023-48246, a variance requesting the maximum number of dockside improvements allowed per parcel near 19 Davis Circle. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Okay, so this one's going to look really familiar. This popped up last planning commission cycle, actually just down the street. This is a zoning variance on section 109-185D, which restricts the number of docks per parcel. So this request would increase the restricted number by 1 so that the applicant could build a deck near their residence at 19 Davis Circle. Staff would note that this subject site, which is the large parcel that actually fronts Lake Windsor, which is a P1 parcel, already has around 6 docks existing with another under construction, again, for 39 Davis, which was approved the last planning commission cycle. And the unique nature of this zoning variance request stems from these communal properties used by the townhouse associations, which are large tracts of land that follow the lakefront, many of which have docks that are pre-existing from the city's incorporation in 2007. So staff finds that this variance request meets the established intent and existing conditions of other similar zone lots, and I think this is actually going to come up later tonight as far as what the Planning Commission wants to do about these moving forward. But given this specific proposal, staff recommends approval. We've received no public comment at this time, and all legal notifications have been met.
All right, any questions for staff? Mr. Farner.
If the next item on the agenda is approved, wouldn't that make this request for a variance a moot point?
It would about 120 days from now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but yes, it would make this go away in about 120 days. Providing we go through the normal cycle of readings with the city council.
Yeah, it could go 3 days, it's up to 3 months to the city council, and then there's a 60-day period we can't enforce it. So 3 months plus the 2-month waiting period.
But that, I understand that.
Yeah. Yep, that would be a correct answer. Is the applicant present? Would you like to add anything to the staff report?
Hello, my name is Kevin Polsky, 19 Davis Circle. As Ruben said, this is a dock variance for our lakefront property at 19 Davis townhome property. Following on the current variance process as approved on multiple properties prior to this one. Understand there is another motion for eliminating this, but due to timing, I would like to proceed forward with the current process for a variance of this type.
All right, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and conduct our public hearing.
Thank you.
If there's anybody in the public that would like to address the commission concerning this variance request, if you would come up and give us your name and address, please. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioner, this back to you.
I make a motion. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Floyd.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I was the listing agent on this property, but I did not represent the buyer. Shall I assume that does not put me in a conflict situation?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
I make a motion, we forward this to the city council.
No, this is a zoning, this is a variance request. We approve it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I make a motion, we approve.
We got a motion from Farner.
Second.
Second from Dool. If you call the roll, please.
Lesson,
Yes.
Farner,
Yes.
Portillo,
Yes.
Floyd,
Yes.
Sudbury,
Yes.
Dool,
Yes.
Ellis.
Yes. Your variance request is approved, and staff will get with you on the next step, sir. Next up, we do have a dockside ordinance change. This is a proposal to amend section 109-185 with the intent to get the city of Bella Vista out of the regulation business for when docks can be put in on a privately owned lake. So looks like Ms. Workman is going to give us some history here.
Thank you. This will be on page 82 of your agenda packet. As requested by the Planning Commission on March 30th, city staff have prepared an amendment to section 109-185, which is the docks, boathouses, and dockside recreational improvement section of the zoning code, to strike letter D, which is the number restricted. It currently reads that one dockside improvement, a dock, boathouse, or any sort of dockside recreational improvement is allowed per parcel, with no relief for parcels that exceed the typical R1 size lot, serve a commercial entity like the POA at the marina, any of the P1 conservation areas that surround the townhomes, any of those considerations are not included in this. It's one dockside improvement per parcel. And so we have prepared that section strike. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for staff? This is an ordinance recommendation that we'll be sending on to City Council, so at this time we will go ahead and conduct the public hearing. If there's anybody in the public that would like to address the commission concerning this change to our code, please step forward and give us your name and address.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Diane Bridges, and I live at 25 Davis Circle. In fact, I'm very happy for Kevin in building his dock. I have one as well. I have a handout. Shall I give it to you? Or
Sure.
Will that take up my time?
Yes, it does. Part of your 5 minutes. Yes, ma'am. We'll pass them out.
Okay, so like I said, I live in one of the townhomes on Lake Windsor and in Brompton Courts. And Brompton Courts is basically, much of Brompton Courts it butts up against the lake, but between our townhomes and the lake, there's limited common property. So it's different than most homes around the lake, and I just want to make that statement. First and foremost, I want to thank you for your service. I also want to say I appreciate the process that the city uses in putting public hearing signs. Otherwise, I would not, and we would have not known about this ordinance change. So we are concerned about lifting the dock limitations overall for parcels that exist in the limited common property, like in our townhome area. We need some kind of limit. We don't want to just exit out. So we not only need some kind of limit, we also need clarification of who can actually build. For example, back in 2016, we had a gentleman that did not live in the townhomes that butt up against the lake, and he wanted to build a townhome down by our property. So we worked with the city and the Bella Vista Townhome Association back at that time to work through that situation, because you can't just have anybody build a dock up against that common property. So there was big debate, big discussion, and both the city, or maybe I should say the ACC, and the Bella Vista Townhome Association committed to put in place regulations that would have ground rules around that. You know, identifying who can actually build, how many you can build, and where you would actually build. The Bella Vista Townhome Association drafted up a policy, and I just reviewed that as part of this public hearing preparation. So we were happy about that. There's some minor modifications we recommend. When I also looked at the documentation preparing for this hearing, I looked at what the ACC policy and procedure manual has about the docks when you build one and it's on the lake. There's wording in today's policy statement that stipulates that yes, an owner can build a dock, but anybody can use it, anybody in the community. And that was a concern that we expressed back in 2016 for liability reasons. That needs to be changed. So anyway, I'm just asking that, that we please clarify that as well. So the bottom line ask that we're here, including myself, asking for is don't remove the limits. Basically retain some kind of limit, but update what's in the city ordinance. Number one. Number two, also ensure that the policies, the procedures, or regulations across the city, the Townhome Association, the POA, and the ACC, that it all be consistent. Right now there are some inconsistencies, and then as part of that process, I've delineated in the handout that I provided to you, we suggest there's clarity again on who can build docks, where, how many, and who can use them, right? And then also which regulation takes precedence if there's a conflict. So I'm just suggesting that. Last week, in preparation again for this meeting, reached out to Megan and the Bella Vista Townhome Association. Coincidentally, they were meeting, they had great discussion on this, and have committed to update the various documents across addressing docks, especially ones that are built against the limited common property, right? So my last ask, please, or our last ask, is to ask for a timeline for when that could be done. So three asks, basically. One, don't remove limits. We need them updated. We need to have limits. Two, ensure the rules, regulations, and policies addressing docks especially against the limited common property, that they all be updated and in sync. And last but not
Okay, your
least,
time
commit
is
to a
up now.
timeline.
Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission? Yes, sir.
Larry Williams, 109 Mayfair Drive, Bella Vista. My apprehension is that striking this from our code may not necessarily address all of the issues that are before us because of the compounding layering. We have the Cooper community developer owners issues with the deed restrictions and things like that, and we have the POA, which is a separate entity. They have rules about things like this, and then we have the city, which is an overarching thing with a lot of respect for control and regulation, but it doesn't overrule some of the private covenants that are out there by no means. So those still are in place. So I guess I would caution you on simply forwarding it on to the council at this point, based on Ms. Diane's comments here about some other issues that might be before us that will arise eventually. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission concerning this?
Last Wednesday, the POA hosted a joint meeting between the ACC, representatives of the city, the Townhouse Association, and the POA. We talked about this specific issue. We talked about solutions and how to solve the problem and how to go about putting this down on paper in a way that's going to work and make it as easy as possible for our property owners. Have reasonable limitations. We don't want to overload the lakes. And so forth. So we have a very productive meeting. We put together a draft document to send it out to all that attended. Comments were solicited. Our plan is, as you referenced, the POA owns the private lakes. So we would envision creating a policy that would cover this, and we would go through the Rules and Regulations Committee, which is a POA committee. So if we're successful in getting everybody on the same page, we could potentially have this policy in place before this rule sunsets.
Any questions for the POA, I guess? All right, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the commission concerning this request? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners, back to you.
What if we were to table this until we get some notification of the rules that are being updated, the policies being updated? I mean, I don't want to vote against it because there's efforts out there being...
even if we forward this on to city council right now, it's going to be 6 months before this rule actually would sunset. Council's got to do 3 hearings, and it's got to hold the other 60 days.
Yeah.
And I still come back to, I think this is probably number 1 or number 2 that we see in variance requests right now is people wanting to modify their docks or whatever it is. And we're still focused on the public health, safety, and welfare of dock construction, dock installation. We're just trying to get out of the business of managing a privately owned lake. Because we've approved every variance that's come before us, and our policy, our underlining guidance as a commission is if we keep approving the variance, then we need to go modify the ordinance. There's not what is the point of having a restriction if we're never going to enforce the restriction? So the other option is just to start denying all the variances, and I don't think that's our intent either. We have an issue here where our code is stricter than what has currently been applied on the lakes of Bella Vista.
I'm not saying vote against it. I'm just saying,
I know.
Can we not finish the discussion this time?
Yeah, you can make a motion to table it for 30 days if you want to. But like I said, we don't do anything other than recommend it to city council. So I guess my question to you is if we table it, what are we tabling it for? We won't hold another public hearing. True. Staff will just come back and say,
here it is again.
Here it is again.
Yeah.
Really, if the POA and the ACC get things figured out by the time they take it to city council, they're the ones that are gonna have to do whatever they do with it. We've held our public hearing.
So what do we do?
Up to you. Just need somebody to make a motion.
Well, tabling doesn't mean it goes away. It
No.
simply means we talk about it
Just
in
30
future.
days.
It just delays it going to city council.
Yep.
Which then you have to evaluate
Go ahead.
that, and that actually does what you want.
Yeah.
Well, I would make a motion, we table it for 60 days, pending hearing what the POA's meeting comes out with.
We got a motion from Farner to table it to our June planning commission meeting.
Second.
Got a second from Portello, if you'd call the roll, please.
Jewel,
Yes.
Sudbury,
No.
Plessy,
No.
Lloyd,
No.
Farner,
Yes.
Portillo,
Yes.
Ellis,
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Yeah, it does. If I vote, however I vote, is what we do
Okay.
with it.
You're right.
Tiebreaker.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and say yes, and we'll take it back up at our June meeting. Hopefully the POA can,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just gonna extend 2 more months, us hearing variances this winter, but on docks. That's really all it does, so not the end of the world.
No.
All right, excellent. Next up, we have waiver 2023-48243, a waiver request on the setback requirements for retaining wall placement for a proposed retaining wall of 13 Carroll Ray Lane. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. So, like you said, this is a waiver request on setback requirements from a retaining wall from a structure. Currently, Section 107.342 stipulates that a building or a structure be placed at least 10 feet or 1.5 times the height of the wall being constructed, whichever is greater. And this request would reduce that setback to allow for 2 retaining walls, one on the downhill side, 3 feet away, and then one on the uphill side, 5 feet away of the proposed storage building and pavilion. And there are some exhibits to follow, and I'll provide some page numbers of the schematics and isometrics of the building. So this property fronts Lake Brittany with 150 feet of shoreline. Currently has a boat dock that was installed in 2020, and there are a couple platforms existing, but the topography of the lot makes access difficult. So this waiver request is part of a larger plan proposed by the applicant to build a pavilion that would replace those structures, and as part of creating a flat surface, these retaining walls would support that pavilion. Again, one 3 feet away and the other 5 feet away. The applicant notes that enforcing this setback requirement, and I'll allow him to expand more on this, but enforcing these setback requirements of 10 feet or 1.5 times the height would require additional land cutting than what would be proposed here. Staff would just also like to note that as far as size requirements go, this building fits the accessory building size requirements, and it's also out of the setback from water's edge. If Planning Commission does approve this though, there is an outstanding engineering comment that needs to be met regarding surcharge load, and so that would need to be satisfied before a retaining wall permit is issued. In the pages to follow though, specifically 85 to 90, the applicant's letter describes the hardship with some photos, and then 91 to 97 include the project plans, and then page 97 specifically highlights the area that the staff engineer has highlighted the surcharge load issue. Beyond this though, staff has no other comment.
All right, any questions for staff? Yes, sir, Mr. Farmer.
I noticed in your write-up, it says that regarding the footing elevation of the storage building and the pavilion, the staff engineer recommends that the footing be on the downhill side is lowered to avoid surcharge load being applied on the retaining wall. Does that change anything that's in the diagrams and the write-up that we have?
Not really. All it does is this one footing, it lowers it down another 2
The footing.
Yeah, the footing.
Okay.
That's not anything that you would see.
That's the only question I had.
Any other questions for staff?
So this wall really only affects his property. So if the wall was to fail, there would be no damage to any other property but his own.
That's correct, and I think that's specified in his letter as well.
Say that again.
I think that's correct.
Okay.
This is not, and this is, another question for you. This is not intended to be a residence, is it? It's just a
That's also correct, yeah.
lake.
Non-residential accessory structure.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff?
And it's an engineered wall, correct? Like it'll have to be an engineered wall.
I don't know.
Right.
I think so.
Okay.
What's the total height of the room?
Actually, I don't think it needs engineering approval. It's at 4 feet, and that's the minimum before it requires engineering approval.
Okay.
But if they had to get a building permit,
But I believe he happens to be an engineer.
Yeah, no, the applicant is himself an engineer, so.
Stamp his own drawings, huh?
This kind of seems less of a planning issue and more of a building inspection issue. I mean,
But there's an ordinance
I
in
know,
place.
I know.
We don't see these very often.
yeah. Okay.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Would you like to add? Yes, sir. Come on up and give us your name and your address, please.
Thank you. My name is John Neely, 13 Carroll Ray Lane. I appreciate you hearing my request tonight. I think Mr. Jones did a pretty good job of explaining it all. We're trying to make some more usable space on our property down by the lake so we can enjoy Lake Brittany. The hill today is pretty sloped like many are around the lakes, and so we're just trying to create a flat spot. A lot of people do that out of decks. We would prefer to not do that just for the maintenance issues associated with lumber decks and things like that. So we really like to build these retaining walls and actually pour some concrete down there to make it more, just more permanent and a nicer future, long term. So we've looked at it, I looked at the code, certainly understanding the intent of the code for safety of structures and failing retaining walls, I think was mentioned. I think in this instance, if we were to actually meet the intent of the code and push our retaining walls way out, we would end up cutting into the hillside so much that we'd clear off, half the trees on our lot, and we'd end up with 10-foot tall retaining walls and things like that. So really what we're requesting here is to just shrink our footprint and kind of limit it to the space that we really need. And so by doing that, we can save more trees on our property, we can keep the retaining walls shorter. And so that's the request. I'm happy to answer any questions. The comment from the staff engineer is totally acceptable with us. I missed that on my exhibit. I think our construction details for the building permit actually show it below grade on the retaining wall, so we're totally acceptable with that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, this is a waiver request. We are not required to conduct a public hearing, so commissioners, it's back to you.
I make a motion, we approve the waiver request.
We got a motion from Farner and a second from Sedbury. If you call the roll, please.
Farner,
Yes.
Wesson,
Yes.
Sudbury,
Yes.
Portillo,
Yes.
Farner,
Yes.
You don't get to vote twice, so.
That's start saying, isn't it?
It's all right.
Lloyd, yes, Ellis,
Yes. Your waiver request is approved, and staff will get with you on the next steps.
So Farner gets to vote twice and I don't get to vote at all?
Oh! I am sorry, we have one commissioner that didn't get to vote.
Not that it matters. I'm good.
Use your proxy vote.
I think you got all 7 yeses now, right?
Is it yes?
Yes.
Yes. All right. It's been a day. It's all right. All right, with that, we move on to open discussion. Is there anything that staff has for the commission during open discussion?
I had just one item that got brought up, the lot combination.
You need to get to the microphone so everybody can hear you. That's all right.
The lot combination, did you want to talk about that? Because I do have information to provide on that. Or do you want to do that at a work session?
I would prefer that we set that on the official agenda and take that up at a work session.
Okay, will do.
Yeah. All right, is there anything else from staff? Yes, ma'am. I will let you go ahead and introduce it, but I have been sitting here pondering it. Since you have handouts and stuff, I think it needs to be on an official published agenda with your handouts as part of the public record made available to staff or to the public before the meeting. So I'll let you go ahead and introduce it, but I don't think we will discuss it tonight. So go ahead.
I was asked by two very irate realtors to bring this forward to the Planning Commission, that there is currently a probable two-family dwelling under construction in Bella Vista. The building department issued a building permit by having them put it in, it has two front doors. The building department issued a permit by having them put an interior door in. And I would like to point out that if you have two hotels with a connecting door, two hotel rooms with a connecting door, it's still two hotel rooms. The building department also required them to put a two-bedroom septic deed restriction in, which is great. They also in January notified the owner, who is also the owner and the realtor are the same person, that they could not rent them as two separate STRs. And that was in January. And in March, when the listing came out, it says, this house in Bella Vista is an exceptional investment opportunity that sets itself apart from the typical single-family house. What makes it so distinctive is that it features two separate sides, each boasting a spacious family room, bedrooms, bathroom, walkout basement, and fully equipped kitchen. So it's...
So we are talking about a specific property?
Yes.
If you go ahead and email that on to staff and we'll let the city attorney take care of it, that's really not an item for the planning commission to address.
I just brought it forward because I was requested.
No, just go ahead and email that on to the staff and we'll let the city attorney address that. All right, anything else for open discussion? All right, city council work session will be on Monday, April 17th at 5:30 p.m. The city council regular meeting will be on Monday, April 24th. We will have a work session on Thursday, April 27th at 4:30 p.m. and we will be back here on May 7th or May 8th at 4:30 p.m. for our regular meeting. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. By the way, these packets and handouts up here are phenomenal to have. I really appreciate those. Big help.